Michael Hastings was a brilliant young journalist. His life was cut tragically short in a car crash in June. Michael joined me on the show last year. It was his last appearance on the show. As you'll see, he was as passionate as ever.
I think there's many other reasons Petraeus should have resigned besides who he's sleeping with that's not his wife. But I just want to make a point here. That the larger point that I've been making is that essentially the media has played a role in protecting David Petraeus and promoting David Petraeus and mythologizing David Petraeus.
A lot of people have spoken out about his life and death, but for the first time, we're going to hear now from his widow, Elise Jordan, who joins me exclusively. Elise, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
You've been a regular on the show as well as Michael. Incredibly sad, incredibly tragic. How are you, first of all?
Just taking it day by day. I was blessed to have the time with him that I had, so I feel very lucky for that, and just taking it day by day. There have been,
as there always are in these situations, wild conspiracy theories that he was chasing some hot story, maybe connected to that, his late-night car crash in Los Angeles, other theories too. Do you subscribe to any of this? Do you have any idea really what may have happened?
I have no doubt that he was pursuing a hot story. He always had at least 5 hot stories going. That was Michael. So, and he also, there will be published his profile of John Brennan in an upcoming issue of Rolling Stone, probably in a couple of weeks. But right now, the LAPD still has an active investigation. I don't really have anything to add. My gut here is that it was just a really tragic accident, and I'm very unlucky, and the world was very unlucky.
He was a real one-off. I mean, the passion he brought that night on the show, the clip on the show was only half of it. He ripped into Petraeus and all those defending him and so on. It was very much his template. He was a passionate man, wasn't he?
Well, he loved, he loved to always challenge conventional wisdom, and that's what I think. There was so much controversy surrounding the Crystal article, and if people actually really read the article, it's less about, the quotes here and there than it is the entire narrative that he brought together, which was challenging the narrative that counterinsurgency was working in Afghanistan. And so with the publication of that article, you can really see where the trajectory of the Afghan war changed, and he really had such an impact.
Well, huge impact. The New York Times, after he died, published an obituary which cast a bit of doubt on Michael's reporting, and you sprang to his defense, I thought, in a magnificent way. You wrote to the New York Times demanding that they retract some of these comments because you felt it was very unfair. Tell me about that.
Well, it's absolutely ridiculous and totally classless. And I think that the New York Times just has a real problem sometimes when other people get scoops and recognizing the contributions of other journalists. And if the obituary writer had bothered to go back and read the report, she would see that what she put out there actually was factually inaccurate. And so I still feel very strongly that we should have a retraction, but clearly the New York Times management can't step up to the plate and admit they made a mistake.
Yeah, pretty shocking behavior, I thought, all around by the New York Times. They should have just done it because you were right and they were wrong. Turning to the general news agenda since Michael's death, he'd have loved all this, wouldn't he? The NSA, Edward Snowden, even all the chatter now, the intelligence. This was right up his wheelhouse.
No, absolutely. There isn't a more contentious time for national security reporters than right now. The Obama administration has an epic crackdown on national security reporters. They're, risking going to prison if they don't reveal their sources. They have, launched investigations on more whistleblowers than the previous 3 administrations combined. And so definitely there was a climate of, I feel like, fear of it made Michael's job a whole lot more difficult, but it also motivated him more than ever to go out there and tell the truth and to, challenge authority and to call for more transparency in government.
And for those who pour scorn on that kind of investigative journalism, as many do, it's a lonely business. What is it like to be married to somebody that was right in the thick of that? It must be dramatic and occasionally pretty scary and all the other things that go with it.
Well, it made life really exciting, and it was just wonderful to be with such a passionate person who really cared so much. And, he cared so much for telling the stories that other people didn't want to tell. And he always said to choose a big target. If you're going to go after someone, you don't go after the grunt in the field. You choose your target big, and that was what he felt was the fair way to go about his writing.
There's a paperback come out of the book actually that he was on to promote last time I spoke to him, The Operators, the wild and terrifying inside story of America's war in Afghanistan. Tell me about the book.
It's a really wonderful book, and to me, I think it will be remembered as the best narrative nonfiction of kind of this decade and these decades of wars, because it is the story of when he went on the embed with General McChrystal, but it's much more than that. It shows the infighting in Washington, the disconnect between the guys on the ground who are fighting the war and the policymakers back in Washington who are completely disconnected from it.
When you look at, as I say, all the current stories and stuff, where do you think Michael would have drawn the line between what should be in the public domain and what shouldn't be, in terms of where you decide what's in the national interest to keep quiet and to publish?
Well, Michael, I mean, he was a pretty big believer in radical transparency overall, but, you know, in his previous commentary on WikiLeaks, for example, you know, he was a supporter of Julian Assange, but he thought that the redaction should have been taken more seriously and that mistakes were made, and had they have been more careful and just secure. And that's, you know, the heavy burden of these whistleblowers, if they're going to do it and if they're going to make a big statement, if they are going to, you know, release highly classified documents, it has to be absolutely perfect.
You a Yankees fan?
Not really, but...
You're a New Yorker, right?
Now I live in New York, but I'm a Mississippi girl, so I like the Braves.
Do you have a view on A-Rod, who's playing tonight? Not playing very well, apparently, but he has tonight earned $175,000 after being exposed as a cheat.
I don't think he really cares anymore. I think he could just care less. And, you know, at this point, he's made a ton of money. He's set some records. He feels like, my legacy's set in another way. I could care less.
What would Michael have thought of him, do you think? Not a lot, I suspect.
Yeah, I don't think that he was really at the top of Michael's list of concerns in life, but you know, Michael was a believer in fairness, and I don't think that he would have really approved of A-Rod necessarily.
Were you surprised by the incredible outpouring of attention that Michael's death got, the tributes and accolades that came in?
Well, I think it's a real testament to his legacy and what he stood for, and you know what a passionate supporter he was of liberty, of human rights, of freedom, of the right to free speech. And so I was definitely, it meant so much to me, all the lovely things that people, and your tribute, thank you so much for that too.
I just thought he was an incredible life force. I loved the passion he brought to his journalism. I thought he was a brave and courageous man, and it's just desperately sad. I mean, sad for us and everyone in the media and the viewers watching who enjoyed him, but particularly for you, obviously. I just want to mention an honour. He was working for BuzzFeed amongst other people towards the end, and to honour his legacy, they created a Michael Hastings National Security Reporting Fellowship in his honour. That's quite something.
I know. The BuzzFeed could not be more wonderful and more supportive, and I feel so blessed that Michael was a part of the BuzzFeed family and that they are still thinking of me and doing, you know, wonderful gestures like this to solidify his legacy as a preeminent reporter of our era.
That's entirely what he was, and you're right to feel very proud of him, Elise. Thank you so much for coming in. The paperback of The Operators, a wild and terrifying inside story of America's war in Afghanistan by the late, great Michael Hastings, is available now. It's good to see you.
Thanks.
We'll be right back.